Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and we're going to be covering the top 8 builds for New Game Plus and beyond. By the way, all the footage in this video is going to be from New Game Plus 7, so we're at the max scaling. Everything has the most amount of HP that it can possibly have at this point, and we're going to cover the top 8 builds for New Game Plus and beyond. First things first, we're going to be covering all of the jump attack bleed builds. Now, I'm going to categorize all the ones here the same. If you're using the bandit curved swords, it's dex and arcane, great for over level 200. Beastman curved swords, strength and arcane, same if you have higher levels. If you're around 125 or 150 though, the scavenger curved swords are excellent because you only have to invest in one stat, that's arcane, because you can put them on a cult and they'll naturally scale the bleed with the arcane stat, and you'll get a ton of physical damage as well. Long story short, as long as you're doing a jump attack bleed build, you're probably doing a ridiculous amount of damage. You can obviously throw the twin blades in there as well. You're going to see the second phase part of Godfrey here. He ends up getting absolutely destroyed by the scavenger curved swords simply by jumping and getting 4 hits on each jump attack, and then the ton of bleed build up and physical damage that you're going to get overall. Probably should have died there, by the way, but ended up surviving it, and we're able to finish them off really quickly here because, again, they're really powerful. This is on New Game Plus 7, so they all have a ton more HP, but it doesn't matter. We're doing percentage damage, physical damage. We're absolutely destroying whatever we're facing simply by repeating jump attacks and using the Raptor's Black Feathers and the Claw Talisman as well. This is a solid setup and build. Bleed builds are pretty much still the meta for Elden Ring, and there's a reason for that. They're super powerful, super overpowered, and they're definitely something that you got to check out if you haven't yet, because they can make the game a lot easier too. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have 2 scavenger curved swords on a colt. Any seal will do. We have the white mask. We've got the Raptor's Black Feathers on. Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, Claw Talisman, Dragon Crest, preferably the Great Shield Talisman, and then we have the Thorny tier, and then we have the Faith tier so we can do some buffs like Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. Let's get into stats for this build. Stats, this is a very easy and straightforward one. If you're going to go on a cult, don't worry about dexterity. Go for the minimum dex at 14. You're going to want at least 50 vigor for a build like this because you're going to be up close and personal, and then you want to get arcane as high as you can because that's going to be your scaling stat for all of your physical damage, as well as the innate bleed that's on the scavenger curved sword. Next up, we have the Blasphemous Blade build. This is one of the easiest builds in the entire game, and this one goes throughout all the New Game Plus cycles. As you can see with Radagon here, yes, granted, he's got 0 fire resistance, so that helps us, but for the majority of the game, you can pretty much sleepwalk through the game with the Blasphemous Blade. It is that good. It's that ridiculously powerful. If you're having a hard time, now is the time to switch to the Blasphemous Blade. It's going to be one of the easiest weapons you've ever used. I mean, it is incredibly easy and user-friendly. Let's get into equipment for this build. For equipment, we have the Blasphemous Blade plus 10. Any seal will do. We have the Raptor's Black Feathers on for this one as well. If you're doing jump attacks, Fire Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Dragon Crest again, preferably the Great Shield. That's the character that doesn't have it for some reason. And then the Fire tier. You can throw something in like the Faith or Defense tier. Let's get into stats. Now for stats, we went high Faith because the Blasphemous Blade's Ash of War scales purely with your Faith stat, and it's basically pure fire damage. So the higher you can get your Faith after you hit that 23 requirement for strength if you want to single-hand it. If you want to two-hand it, I think 15 or 16 is enough. After that, high Faith. Next up here, Moghwyn Sacred Spear. Moghwyn Sacred Spear is incredibly powerful. It does an insane amount of fire damage and bleed build up at the same time. I took on this dragon just to show it off, even though this dragon is weak to fire damage, but you can crush the majority of bosses in the game simply for the fact that it does so much bleed and so much fire damage. Truly is one of the most convenient weapons too, because you can just stand there, you can go up behind enemies, or if you're using summons or the like, you can definitely do that too, and then just hold this up in the air, do this 3 times essentially, and chew through the majority of their HP. And yes, you are a standing target for the most part, but if you're able to get up behind an enemy and start this, you're going to chew through so much HP, even if you can just get the first 2 off. I know the last one goes on a bit longer, but they do a lot of damage altogether. It's absolutely crazy how much Blood Blue and Ritual does. It's one of the best weapons in the game. Let's get into equipment for this one. For equipment, we have Moghwyn Sacred Spear plus 10. Any seal will do for this build. We had Raptor's Black Feathers on, Fire Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and then we have the Fire tier, and then you can throw in the Faith tier so you can do any buffs that you want to do as well. This is a really powerful one. Let's get into stats. For stats, this is a strength arcane weapon. If you're going for the physical portion, you're going to lean more towards strength. As far as the ash, at least from my own testing, it seems to scale a lot with arcane, so you're going to want to soft cap that at around 45 because that's going to give you a lot of damage on that really powerful, super overpowered weapon art that we like so much because it really is ridiculous and it'll absolutely carry you through New Game Plus cycles. Next up here, Marais Executioner Sword, one of the most buffable weapons in the entire game. Its unique Ash of War is incredibly powerful in the fact that it's basically a corkscrew that builds up successive attack power, and you're going to see here as I put the Godskin Apostle, the tougher one I think that's in the basement of Caelid. By the way, I'm going to show at the end, you get the Godslayer's Greatsword down here as a side note, one of my favorite weapons. This one went down very quickly because Marais Executioner is that powerful. It's an incredibly powerful weapon. It absolutely shreds bosses' HP with ease. Now, this is where you get the Godslayer's Greatsword, by the way. I wanted to throw that in there because I really love that weapon. It's one of my favorite weapons in the entire game. The Queen's Black Flame is one of the coolest Ashes of War. We need more Ashes of War like that in DLC. Let's get into equipment for this one. For equipment, we have Marais Executioner plus 10. Any seal will do. We have the Raptor's Black Feathers on again. Shard of Alexander. Rotten Wing Sword Insignia. Millicent's Prosthesis. Godfrey Icon, because this is chargeable. And then you're going to want the Thorny tier and then the Faith tier as well, so you can do those buffs. Let's get into stats. This is a strength and arcane weapon, so I kind of split it up here. I think I was at 45 and 45. If you can get both to 50, that would be great. If you're continuing to level up, they seem to cap around between 50 and 60 of both the arcane and the strength stat, and you'll maximize the damage out of the Ash of War. And next up here is one of my favorite, possibly one of the best builds in Elden Ring, at least in my opinion, Night Comet. Comet is truly a mage's most powerful toolkit. Now, you can use Comet Azure, you can use Meteorite of Astal. You have a whole bunch of options to absolutely destroy things, but a lot of them make you a standing target. Night Comet doesn't make you that. It still does a ridiculous amount of magic damage. It's chargeable, and it's incredibly powerful. So easy to use too, and when you charge it, the damage is incredible without even many buffs. Given the fact that in this, we're looking at probably only Golden Vow by this point, I took out Beast Clergyman. He went down fairly quickly, but I wanted to make this clip a little bit shorter. As far as Malachite though, we don't have many buffs running, and we're still doing an incredible amount of damage on New Game Plus 7 with Night Comet because it's that good. Did I mention the range on it is also ridiculous? It has some of the best range in the entire game of anything that you're going to use. You can utilize this to destroy the majority of bosses, especially if you do decide to buff it up at a complete distance without even being near them most of the time. It is that good. Night Comet's one of my favorites. It's one of the most convenient and easiest to use as well. Let's get into equipment for this incredibly powerful mage setup. Equipment, any seal will do. We have 2 Staves of Loss, one at plus 25 that you're going to be casting with. If you don't have a second one, you can use the Jellyfish Shield. We have the Magic Scorpion Charm, Godfrey Icon, Graven Mask Talisman, Ritual Swords Talisman. Then we have the Magic tier, and then you can throw something in like the Faith tier if you want to do some buffs as well. Let's get into stats for this one. Did a couple of these on my mage character at level 200. I'm just putting this up here to show you that I used Golden Vow, Halashaburi, and then we used Terra Magica. Duela's Moonblade is a solid secondary, kind of the bread and butter thing, and then we used Night Comet. But I'm going to show you what to do at level 150 on screen here in a second, what exactly to do with your stats to get completely comparable damage. Now for the 150 stats, you can see we have 50 Vigor, we're getting a 65 Intelligence, and then with that 23 Faith, with the Faith tier, we can do all the buffs we like as well. There's the 150 stats, and next up here is the Darkmoon Greatsword build, one of my favorite weapons in the game. That universal stat system, by the way, will be good for pretty much everything. The only thing is you'll need 4 more points of strength if you have to swap out for the Jellyfish Shield if you're running Night Comet. On to the Darkmoon Greatsword, which is incredible in the sense that it does a lot of damage, pure magic damage, so it can be boosted by Terra Magica. It does frost buildup, not on this gargoyle, but on a lot of bosses. It does stance damage, which is huge, 30-something stance damage per beam. And then, since when you use its Ash of War, it's good for a minute, it's one of the most FP-friendly weapons in the entire game of Elden Ring. For the Darkmoon Greatsword, I know it's been used by pretty much everybody at this point because it is one of the better weapons in the game and because it's so iconic given the fact that in pretty much all of the Souls games, you're going to see some variant of it. But this is a variant of it that I absolutely love. Given the fact that we're giving that increased stance damage, the amount of magic damage you can do, and how much you can buff stuff in Elden Ring, it turns into a fantastic build that can take down bosses easily. Let's get into equipment. Now for equipment, we have the Darkmoon Greatsword plus 10, any seal will do. We have the Spellblade set on, which will boost the damage on the beam for this by 8% in total. Magic Scorpion Charm, Shard of Alexander, Godfrey Icon, because this is chargeable, Ritual Swords Talisman, and the Magic tier. And you can throw in the Faith tier if you need to do buffs. Let's get into stats for this one. Again, we're on my mage one more time here, and I think there's actually going to be another one here, but what I was running with this was basically the same thing, the Darkmoon Greatsword in combination with, I really like a dual as Moonblade for the bread and butter thing, and then Night Comet, and as far as my stats goes, if you're continuing to level up, get to 60 Vigor if you can, and make sure you have a little bit of Faith. Next up is the last mage build on here, and that is Death's Poker, which is incredibly powerful. Now for Death's Poker, you're able to get a ton of damage out of this. For me, I'm on Xbox. I like the left trigger and then the RB, which gives you a frost trail. And we're going to put the Godskin Noble to sleep here. And then we're going to do a ton of damage with that frost trail. Just a couple of simple buffs can absolutely destroy the majority of bosses with the amount of magic and frost damage it can do. This one's really incredibly powerful, and it's something that, as far as New Game Plus cycles, it's not going to matter much because you're going to be getting those frost procs, which comes up as percentage damage, and then magic damage is pretty much universally great for all of it. Again, everything in this video is on New Game Plus 7. Everything has the maximum amount of HP it's ever going to get, and he absolutely gets destroyed by Death's Poker. It's that good. It's an incredible toolkit for a mage. Something I enjoy running on my mage because it's a lot of fun to use too. This is a really powerful one. Let's get into equipment here. For equipment, any seal will do. We have Death's Poker. We have the Spellblade set on again because it will boost this, the Magic Scorpion Charm, Shard of Alexander, Dragoncrest Great Shield Talisman, Ritual Swords Talisman, and then we have the Magic tier, and then you can throw in again the Faith tier if you need to do your Faith buffs as well to increase your damage. Let's get into stats for this one. This is the last time I'm going to show my mage stats here, and we had the 150 stats. I'll put that in the timestamps, by the way, because everything in this video is going to be timestamped. I was running the same setup for all of these when I was doing these clips, and it's just kind of universal at this point. It's an incredibly powerful setup. And next up here, we have Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike and the full Lightning build. Incredibly powerful Faith build. Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike is obviously notorious for being good against large targets, but the thing is, once you get used to casting it, you're able to charge it. You can actually one-shot the majority of bosses in the game, and even if you're running a safer build like the build I'm running now without a ton of extra buffs, no low health proccing or poison proccing, you can still do a ton of damage with ADLS. You see that on screen here when we one-shot the second phase of the Fire Giant. This was from my lightning video, by the way. That was an awesome video. It was a lot of fun to do that one, and as you can tell, he backed up there and just bam, one shot, he goes down. New Game Plus 7, doesn't matter. He's got a lot of HP. He is a large target, so you do have the advantage there, and he absolutely got crushed by Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. Get into equipment for this build. The equipment we have for this setup is the Gravelstone Seal and the Jellyfish Shield. We had the Black Dumpling on if you want to proc that for an extra 10% for a minute. Ritual Swords Talisman, Phlox Canvas Talisman, Dragoncrest Great Shield Talisman, Lightning Scorpion Charm, and then we have the Lightning tier, and you can throw something like the Faith or the Defense tier as well. It's definitely going to be a solid setup for this one. Let's get into stats. For stats, we went heavily with Faith. Once you hit that 20 and you have the Jellyfish Shield, which is 5% more than running dual seals, but if you run dual seals, you don't have to worry about the 20 strength requirement, but again, that 5% more damage is a nice bonus. And then we're going for incredibly high Faith here. As you can see on screen, we have all sorts of lightning spells to kind of utilize it and make the best of that build. Really powerful one. So can you become champion of pretty much everything with these builds? Yeah, you can. You can run through the game. I think I've beaten Elden Ring probably close to 80 times now. It's been incredible since launch. It's been one of my favorite games. It's pretty much one of the only games that I'm playing currently, and I still love it. Cannot wait for DLC. These are the best builds to run on New Game Plus 7 and beyond. You're going to absolutely crush it with these builds and setups. I know we all can't wait for DLC. People are always asking me what are the best setups for New Game Plus 7. I decided to just title it as New Game Plus Onward, but these are the 8 best that I found for New Game Plus 7, and once again, all of the footage was from New Game Plus 7. If you guys enjoyed this one, I hope this was super helpful. It was meant to be helpful in the sense of just making things easier and giving you powerful builds to work with. If you're having a hard time, if you're stuck at all and you have any similar setups, you can run any of these and you can absolutely start destroying many of the bosses in the game. These builds are going to make your life a lot easier. If you're not on the Discord, definitely be sure to join that. You can do channel build suggestions there too. If you have an idea and you want it turned into a build, definitely be sure to check that out. And if you're not subbed and you love overpowered PvE builds, be sure to check out all the awesome builds that are on my channel. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will catch you guys there.